For this session, our guest is a VP of Growth at Drift, and he's here to share his fantastic energy and passion for delightful customer experience with us. So please join me. Welcome Guillaume on stage.
Thank you. Thank you. In the beginning, there was nothing. And then the visitor appeared on the website. The marketer was filled with joy. Somebody was enjoying his content. Unicorns, rainbows, they was going to fill his mind. Together, they were going to dance till the end of times. And then the visitor left. Hello, I'm Guillaume Cabane. I'm the VP of Growth at Drift. And today I'm going to talk about how we create delightful conversations before people hit your website. Where were we? There are two things happening, two experiences happening at the same time, right? On one hand, we have the perspective of the marketer, right? And on the other hand, we have the perspective of the customer, okay? So what happens, right? We know little or nothing about the visitor when they come to a site, right? At most, the ad that they click on. But what happens before they click on that ad? Nothing. The void. The Big Bang. There might be or there might not be a customer, right? But given we don't look, quantum mechanics say that both states overlap, right? Customer and non-customer happen at the same time. They superpose, right? Let's get back to that later. But talking of the visitor, right? Their perspective is extremely interesting. On their side, they start with a pain that needs solving, right? Extremely rarely do we buy something without researching, without a need, right? And never in the case of B2B, right? So there's a need, there's a problem. And so the human searches a lot. They search reviews, they search information. If you're not convinced, check this out, right? There's a 375% increase year over year on the best salt, the best table salt, right? How crazy is that, right? Who has the time to search for the best table salt on your mobile device, right? But people do that, right? And we all do that. I do that when I search for a restaurant or for a hotel. I spend countless hours searching for the best restaurant. And so how much time am I going to spend when I'm looking for the best B2b SaaS solution? A lot of time, right? And so what do we do? Well, most marketing technology exists to optimize the relationship with the customer after they express the intent, after they come to your site, right? After when they search on Google and then they come to you. The MarTech is there for that, right? After they click on the ad, after they land on the website, after they sign up, after they pay. But like what we do at Drift is about the now, right? It's about creating the delight amongst people interested in your product now, people who are on your website now, people who want to engage with you now, right? And it's 100 times better than pushing them to a form, right? Pushing them to later. And to express that, let's check this quick video.
All right, let's see. I think I'm going to go with this.
Sir, before you look at that, I'm going to need you to answer some questions for me. Can I get your name, email, contact information, birth information, relationship status, political affiliation, Facebook URL, favorite TV show? Do you think pineapple belongs on pizza? Sir, I'm going to need you to answer these for me. Your favorite season, best series, your favorite baby name. Which of the following do you find the most difficult to deal with? Hunger, cold, loneliness, celebrity ranking?
For the record,
we have that for you to fill out.
For the record, I do believe that pineapple belongs on pizza. I'm a pineapple on pizza guy. Yeah, I have some other believers here. Thank you. So the customer, they know they're paying now, right? But like, what kind of retail business would talk to their customers like that, right? Maybe that kind of business, right? So what's broken here? Well, what's broken is that the way we've been taught to do our jobs at the businesses we work at, it's perfectly suited for a world that no longer exists, all right? Because those tools were built for later. So that's about the now, and that's about the later. And we've become quite good at predicting the future, and I cover some of that. But what I want to talk about today is the past, about what happens before people land on your website, right? Before they start engaging with you, Remember I talked about how they engage in searches for the best mobile salt, right? That's what I'm going to talk about, right? All those reviews, all that confirmation of information, we're going to talk about that right now. So a 2015 Forrester survey says that 52% of B2B buyers prefer researching data on their own versus talking to a sales rep. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. Half of the people don't want to talk to your sales, right? And so you think, hey, G, well, it's going to get better. It's 2015, right? We've created better experience since then, right? In 2017, it's 68%, right? It's horrible. That's 2/3 of the people don't want to talk to your sales reps. Forrester called that the death of the B2B salesman. I kind of like that title, right? More than that, 70% of B2B buyers start with a generic brand search query rather than, with a generic query rather than a brand query, right? Which means that they don't even care about your company or your brand, right? They just want the solution to their pain. And so the truth is, we've created an expectation of a crappy experience, right? Why is that? Why have we done that? Well, there's something wrong with the idea of a target audience as we marketers think about it, right? It leads us to think that we're doing good marketing because we target marketing decision makers in companies 100 to 500 employees with an Alexa rank of like 100,000 or less. But like most marketing is not targeted, right? And it's all fault. It's kind of my fault. I'm a marketer, right? We 100% ignore the needs of our customers, the momentum, the tempo, the intent, right? My goal is to maximize the revenue and minimize the number of people that I'm reaching out to, right? I'm trying to be as efficient as possible, not just because of the financial costs, but because there's a real cost to bad marketing, right? So let's cover some of that. Imagine that you have a cost of acquisition, a CAC, that's above your cost of selling, right? What you see here. Right? There's a profitable lead, a profitable campaign, right? The cost of sale is slightly lower than the sales velocity, right? And sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you have unprofitable campaigns where, the cost of selling is higher than the value of the lead, and so you lose money, right? And so what do you do when you're a marketer? You try to solve that problem. Well, you do what everyone does. You lower the cost, right? And when you lower the cost, what you're doing is that you are creating a crappy experience because you have no budget left, right? You have just so many dollars per user, so few dollars, that there's just nothing you can do with that. Once you brought them to your site, that's the end of what you can invest, right? And so you're doing that crappy experience. And if we go back here, this is what you have, which means these are all your users coming to your site. You don't know their value. And because you don't know their value, you have to lower the cost for everyone. And that's the main problem. You're not doing something that's personalized. You're doing something for one thing for everyone. And the way that we have solved that is to do a prediction of future value, lead scoring, if you want to think about it that way, right? And we've worked with a company called MadKudu to score all of the leads. We were able to extract about 80% of our future won opportunities of our revenue within about 16% of our leads. And because this is truly quite a technical audience, I want to dive quickly into how that works. The model is based on firmographic data. And it's an ensemble model composed of regression and decision trees. Here's one of the decision trees. And it starts at the employee count, and then it splits. It considers the market cap, or how much they raised, the Google rank, the technology, and so on, and so on, and so on. Right? And so there's multiple trees, and it looks at the best possible tree. And so if you go back to this, and you apply that model, and you have that uncertainty map, if you don't know the velocity, the value of each user, what you can do by applying that model is actually placing each user along that curve of value. And so now you know exactly how much dollars is each visitor, each user worth to your company. And when you have that, what you can do is you can put leads into separate experiences. You can have an experience with a high cost and a high value, and then an experience with a low cost and a low value. Now, this is extremely important because you have 2 buckets here, but you could have 8, 10 buckets if you wanted, where you can actually optimize the service that you're giving, the marketing experience you're giving, based on the value of the user. So let's look at our funnel. Where does the funnel start? Right? If you ask a marketer, I'm a marketer, I'm going to say, well, the funnel starts at the top when people land on my website. Sure. But what happens before? right? What's up there? Well, we talked about how they do all of those searches. I looked some data. Google says in 2015 that B2B buyers do 12 searches before engaging with a brand. That's a whole lot. And it makes sense. We saw that. It makes sense. 12 searches still is a whole lot of life cycle that happens before people come to me. And so we have that kind of trade-off, right? Between, well, we're either very early in the funnel, in the buying cycle, and we have very limited data, or we're very late in the funnel, and we can do all the predictions I told you about predicting the value of each user, right? And that trade-off is kind of horrible. And I want to go into the model of how that works, right? If we model that life cycle, if you imagine that the likelihood to buy that we expressed earlier can be expressed on a scale from 0 to 1, where 1 is the conversion event, right? There's a base belief that brings your customers about 20% there. In my case, I sell a live chat, and so you could imagine that people think as B2B buyers, yeah, live chat is good. They're not convinced they're going to buy Drift. They're not convinced to buy it at all, but they think it's good, right? It doesn't make them convert, though. And so they're going to visit third-party websites. They're going to have those 12 searches, right? They're going to visit my website. They're going to do a self-discovery of the product. Maybe I have a trial. Maybe I have good marketing content. They're going to register for a trial. They're going to do assisted discovery with sales reps or nurture campaigns. All of that is actually the behavior, all right? That behavior goes up, close to 1, close to conversion, and goes back down. Most people don't convert, right? Most people bounce. Some of them do convert. And as a marketer, I try to solve that by putting some campaigns, by pushing the motivation up, by sending some emails, right? What actually happens usually is that I am very optimistic. I think everyone's going to convert, but unfortunately they don't, because the actual effect is always lower than the campaign goal, right? And the reason for that is because I push after the trial starts, which means I push too late or I push too little. Of course, if I had a high injection of momentum, I said, hey, you can all get a free Tesla if you buy my product, well, people would buy my product, obviously, right? But unfortunately, that would put me in a negative margin territory. Or I push too late, which is what everyone does, which is like come back and get 20% off, right? So you have a cost that's incurred, but you have no revenue. So what you need to do is that you need to compute the optimal time to inject motivation, and you got to find out not only when, but by how much you need to inject. And that's what I'm going to dive in. It's the ability to do early detection of buying intent and how to inject momentum before they get to your site, before they start the trial. So how do we solve that? My team, the growth team at Drift, solved that by leveraging intent data. So if you take that curve and you expand the discovery of market, those 12 searches, and you put them on a line, what happens is that before the website, all those events can be discovered, right? If you work backwards from the visits and you mimic the actual behavior of future visitors, you can see that before they come to the website, maybe they read about a topic, maybe they hire someone, maybe they install a competitive technology or my technology, maybe they upvote my product on Product Hunt, or even better, they check out my page or a competitor's page on G2 Crowd, right? All of those data points are data points that I can actually buy data from, intent data, and that I do buy from. And what's more, you can actually move your scoring, your prediction model, from after the website to the very first touch. Because you already know the behavior of companies, of users, you can do a probabilistic model that tells you how likely they are to buy along the way. Let's give some examples. So Datanyze tells me when they tell me about the technographics with historical data, which means I can build strategies to undercut my competitors. That's a good one that I like a lot. I want to share here. I have a big competitor, and they're bigger than me, right? Which is a good thing, which means I can monitor everyone who installed the JavaScript of my competitor, and I can reach out to that account 10 months later. Why 10 months? Because most of us do annual deals, right? In an annual deal business, there's a renewal after a year, right? If I hit them after 10 months, I can undercut the price by half, right? Why do I do that? It's going to hurt my margin. Sure. But if that account leaves and comes to me, it's a huge churn for my competitor. That's a win for me. If they don't come to me, right, and they just leverage my offer to lower the price with their current vendor, that's a churn for them. In both cases, it's a churn for them, and it's a win for me. Great strategy. GG Crowd, review website. It's like the Yelp of SaaS software, right? They sell within the premium subscription a package that lets you get the IP traffic data each time that your logo, my logo, is displayed on the page, right? The category page, the competitor page, you name it, right? And you can see here an actual data from Informatica that multiple people from that company came to multiple competitor pages within the live chat category, right? This is amazing intent. Like there's like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 different people who viewed like 5 different competitors in a month and a half. They're in a buying motion. It's like, this is very obvious. Like you give that to a SaaS website, like, go after it. Product Hunt, well known for smaller startups. Free API, you can get the data of who upvotes which product. Again, amazing intent. LinkedIn, this is actually my VP of marketing. The guy does posts that get 1,800 likes and 2,500 comments, right? I'm not just going to let that be on LinkedIn there, right? There's a huge value for us to know who has upvoted and who has commented that post. So we scrape that and we upload that to our database and to Salesforce so that our reps can follow up and say, you know, they're going to say, hey, Lee Shepard, thank you for upvoting or commenting the post from our VP of marketing. Can we have a chat, right? Amazing intent, high volume. And Bambora is interesting and tricky. They have partnerships with a couple thousand publishers of business content. They collect the IP addresses and the URLs of the pages visited. And then they have crawlers who are going to do like natural language processing, who are going to understand the context of the page, extract the topics, and then they can tell you, hey, this company, there's a surge of readership in that specific content in that topic. And they sell that back to you. Semrush is amazing. They tell you who is buying ads, how the ad budget is moving up or down, and they tell you specifically for any website how much they're paying for each keyword, how much volume they're buying, and which page they're sending it to. So in my case, I can see here that Informatica, that keyword, they're buying their own brand at $5, but they're buying the data integration, the keyword data integration at $27 per click, all right? And they're sending to that page. That's, again, amazing intent for us. So how can we store that data, right? Because a company can trigger multiple signals in a short period of time. It's very simple. We just put it in Salesforce, right? And you can see here an actual screenshot I took in September from our Salesforce. You can see that we detected the install if a competitor tool, and then they came to our website anonymously. We had a conversation, another anonymous visit, and then they bought. So what do we do with that data? Well, the very simplest way to think about it is that we take the IP address, we get the domain back through a company called Clearbit, we apply the scoring we talked about, then we request specific profiles, and we send an email, which means we're doing outbound, right? We're doing outbound, but it's very qualified outbound. We get over 80% open rates and over 20% response rates, right? Like most people in this room probably did not get that level of open rates on their corporate lists, right? It's not because the email is good. People often ask me, hey, G, like, what's the subject line of the email? It doesn't really matter. What matters is that there's intent. Those people actually come to your website. They are ready to buy. Of course, they're going to open the email. And so you can think about that as intent data, right? There's on one side, the collection of intent. On the other side, the action based on that intent. In the middle, the enrichment and scoring. But why limit yourself to email, right? Once you have that intent, you could do a lot of other things. You could say, hey, I want to do some chat. I want to change the web content. I want to do some advertising. I want to send some physical goods. Maybe you're a Twitter customer. You want to send a text message, right? Once you've collected the intent, any marketing channel is available to you. Let's go through a couple of those. So if you look at ourselves, our live chat, we do that, right? We programmatically have campaigns that change the content of the chat and pop up a different chat based on the score real time, which means we understand which company is coming to our site without even signing up. We score that company, and then we display live chat. But we can do a lot more than that. we can actually say, hey, there's a huge value. We know that this company is going to close at like a $500 whatever, right? And so we can actually ask a question. I've done that recently. It was very fun. Instead of having a random bot message which says, hey, how can we help you? Which is like not very engaging. We created a welcome message with our chat bot, which is, hey, how do you like your coffee? And so people say like, what crazy question is that? Like there's a website, they ask me, how do I like my coffee? And you can see that's an actual like screenshot. It says, well, no, like tea or coffee, tea, okay. And it goes through the collection of an order, right? And then we ping Sendozo, which pings Postmates for us, and we actually deliver coffee at the office in most cities within 20 minutes, right? Because we know where to deliver the coffee. That's about 15 to 20 bucks. And it's a memorable experience. It's an amazing experience, right? For $20 in B2B, the cost of that experience is negligible versus the value, the perceived value. So chats, okay, pretty good chats. But like chats and sending emails is still, it's still an afterthought. People are still getting like a crappy experience on your main homepage. The homepage is still not personalized. It does not curate to the needs of the customer, the needs that you do know. And so we did something where we changed the homepage itself, right? Based on the score, based on the prediction, we started changing the page. Why don't we think about it? One experiment here I want to pinpoint. Show pricing link. You see that at the top, which means that there's an experiment which hides the pricing link. Now that's an interesting one. We hide the pricing link for large companies, right? Why do we do that? Well, like Twilio or like many others, we are a SaaS company which has packages at $100 and packages for companies, enterprise at like a couple $1,000s a month. Well, what does Nike think, or what does Crate & Barrel think when they come to our site, if they see that pricing? They are anchored mentally on a lower price, right? And so for my sales rep to be able to go in and sell a very highly expensive package, it's really hard when the customer is anchored on low price. So we hide the pricing link programmatically, and we change all of the CTAs from sign up to get a demo. And so with that, we're ensuring that we have a brand and a web page that corresponds to what large companies expect, right? Which is basically get a demo, don't see the price. And again, to be a bit technical here, I want to explain how that works, because for that to work, we need to be able to change the page in less than 0.3 seconds after the page was done. And you can't really do that client-side. That's not going to work, right? And so what we do is that we actually run 2 different clocks at the same time. We have a secondary node server that gets a copy of the HTTP GET request, right? And on the GET request, we actually start the enrichment, right? So we enrich the IP, we score the company that we get back, right? And before the entire header is loaded, because it just goes synchronously and in one order, before the entire header, we put the JavaScript that changes that page at the bottom of the header. When it gets called, we have already computed the variation. So we're using the time it takes to go through the header and load all the scripts to actually change the page itself, and run that computation. And we get about 80% coverage in 0.3, 0.4 seconds. And so this is what it looks like, right? You collect all of those intent sources, you score them, and then you have a consequence, an output, all right? And all of that happens on your site or off your site. It doesn't really matter. And so there's no real importance on like the sign up before or after the sign up, because you already know who's going to buy. You already know the accounts. You know the people at the accounts. And so you might ask, well, Guillaume, what's the performance? That's nice and funny, but like what does it work? Well, in the past 9 months that we started doing that, we generated about 70% of the leads for the company, 40% of the revenue at a $0 marginal cost. We're not doing CPC, right? So yes, there's the cost of buying the data for sure, and the cost of my engineers, but like the marginal lead costs 0, right? So what do we do with those leads? Yep. There you go. There's one thing I want to share, which is what do we do with those leads? Do we just give them to the reps, or do we just automate them with an email? Well, I kind of have a difficult relationship with humans. And I kind of like them, but I also want to minimize the importance of humans in my process, right? Because humans are not perfect. And so we are leveraging a system, we created a system to put pressure on our sales reps and maximize the output. I want to share it here for the first time. When we have a lead, the lead is uploaded to Salesforce. And then we have a 24-hour SLA, which means that if the rep does not touch that lead within 24 hours with a personalized sequence, we will pull the lead back and they will lose it, right? And we'll automate it. And one thing that you don't see here is that we, there you go. So the top 5 reps are at 3% performance, which means they convert 3% of the leads into close-won accounts. Our automation is at 2%, and the lower bound are at 1%. And so I saw that, and I thought, well, there's like a couple of reps who are really good. But like, what about the people at 1%? Like, should I give them the leads when I know they're going to like cut my performance in half? Like, I'm paying them, and they're costing me money. It's like, I have like, that's not obvious, right? And so we created another system, which is basically the same thing as you could think as a massive Bayesian distribution system, where the lead gets into Salesforce, and we look up what was the performance of the sales rep historically in the past 3 months. If the rep has overperformed automation, he or she will get that lead. If the rep has underperformed automation, they will not get that lead. And there's a 10% distribution that goes into both ways so that we can see if they slowly get back on track, right? Which means that we are thinking of of reps like a variation on a page, right? The variation slowly is starved of traffic if it underperforms a winning variation. Do the same thing with a rep. If a rep overperforms, great, they are allowed to more leads. If they underperform, eventually, they will leave because we'll have no leads left, right? So it's like a natural selection system which, with a bit of help. And about costs and margins, why stop at detecting the intent and doing the marketing outreach? Because we could be doing so much more, right? Because if you remember what we're doing, right, we're kind of predicting a progressive score, right? The more we have touches, the more we have confidence in that customer closing with us, signing up and paying, right? So we have an increasing confidence. That confidence, if you multiply it by the average sales price, the ASP, gives you a value, right? The value increases not because the ASP increases, but because your confidence in you closing that customer increases. And if you have that prediction of value, well, you could have a budget, right? Which means you can actually apply different budgets at different confidence levels. The more you have confidence, the more you can spend to close, right? And the right way to think about that is if you know how advertising work and bidding on advertising work is exactly the same thing, right? On those platforms, the person who wins the right to display the ad is the person who bids the most because they have the highest confidence in their ability to close, have a click that actually brings revenue. I'm just doing the same thing, but on a B2B business. So that's what we're doing. We're adding some AI in the middle, not only because AI is fancy and nice, but mostly because we have a lot of predictions and decisions to make, and we really can't like do that on a rules-based system, right? We need to have a way to say this is the next best action based on the signals you get, based on the cost, and based on the impact of each action. I want to leave you with 2 things. One is that's the motto of the growth team, which is we're about delighting future customers. And what we measure as a KPI is positive conversations, right? Not just leads. I'm from Drift. I'm always hiring and marketers, engineers, whatever. And thank you very much. And we're open for questions. No time? OK. No questions. No time for questions. Thank you.